Who let this stray in? Subpolitically in. Somebody call the pound. We got a black dog loose on my floor.
That's what Trent Holloway said the second Imani Davis walked into Sterling Atlantic Bank.
I'm your new intern, sir.
Intern? We don't put animals behind desks. Get out.
Last I checked, animals don't graduate summa cum laude, but I'd love to compare resumes.
The whole floor stopped breathing. Holloway's jaw clenched. He stepped forward and swung his open palm straight across her face. Slap. One open hand, full force, right across her face. The sound cut through the floor like a whip crack.
You'll never last here, black girl.
Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. She pressed her hand to her burning cheek, looked him dead in the eye, and didn't move an inch. Few people knew what that silence would cost him. 3 weeks before that slap, Imani Davis sat across from her father at the dining table of their brownstone in Georgetown. Graduation cap still on the shelf. Summa cum laude in finance from Howard University. 22 years old and already restless. Her father stirred his coffee and said one thing. You're going in under your own name. No title, no favors, no shortcuts. If you can't survive the floor, you can't lead it. Her father was Raymond Davis, chairman of Sterling Atlantic Bank. The man whose signature sat on every quarterly report and whose face hung in the lobby of every branch on the eastern seaboard. He'd started as a teller at 23, worked every rung, took every hit. And now he sat at the top of one of the most powerful financial institutions on the East Coast. But Imani didn't want the top. Not yet. She wanted the floor. What if they find out who I am? Raymond set down his cup. Then you'll know whether they respect you or your last name. Either way, you'll learn something. So she applied through the general portal, used her own transcript, wrote her own cover letter, listed no family connections, checked no boxes that didn't belong to her, got placed at the downtown Manhattan branch, the busiest, most competitive location in the network. She didn't know who ran it. Trent Holloway, senior vice president, 46 years old, 18 years at Sterling Atlantic. He'd built that branch from a mid-tier office into the highest-grossing location in the state. And he ran it the way he ran everything. Loud, tight-fisted, and with zero tolerance for anyone he considered beneath him. The staff didn't respect him. They feared him. HR complaints had been filed 4 times in 3 years. Every single one disappeared. Because Trent had one friend in the right place. Colton Briggs, the branch's head of human resources, golf buddy, college roommate, fraternity brother from Dartmouth, the kind of friend who made problems go away before they ever reached a desk that mattered. Together, they had built something worse than a toxic workplace. They had built a sealed system. Complaints went in, nothing came out. And anyone who pushed too hard found themselves transferred, sidelined, or quietly encouraged to resign. The morning Imani walked in, Trent saw exactly what he wanted to see. Young, black, alone, no connections, no protection, easy target. He didn't check her file, he didn't read her transcript, he didn't even glance at the placement letter sitting in his inbox. He didn't care. What he also didn't notice was the thin gold bracelet on her left wrist. Simple, elegant. 2 letters engraved on the inside of the clasp. R.D. Nobody on that floor had any reason to look twice at it. Not yet. By the end of that first morning, Imani had been slapped, humiliated, and reassigned to a supply closet on the 3rd floor. No desk, no computer, no access badge. Just a folding chair and a door that locked from the outside. The supply closet smelled like toner and old carpet. Imani sat in the folding chair for 2 hours that first morning. No one came. No orientation packet, no welcome email, no login credentials. Just the hum of fluorescent lights and the muffled sound of phones ringing on the other side of the wall. At 11:15, she stood up, smoothed her blazer, and walked back onto the floor. Trent Holloway spotted her before she made it 10 steps. "Who told you to leave your station?" "I was waiting for my assignment, sir. No one came." "Your assignment?" He leaned back in his chair and grinned at the 2 associates sitting across from him. "You hear that? She thinks she has an assignment." The associates laughed. Not loud, but loud enough. You want an assignment? Fine. He pointed to the break room. Coffee station's filthy. Go clean it. When you're done, the bathroom on the second floor needs paper towels. After that, come find me and I'll decide if you're worth talking to.
Imani didn't blink.
I was hired as a finance intern. My placement letter says, your placement letter doesn't mean a damn thing in my branch. He stood up, 6'2", leaning over her. You do what I tell you, when I tell you, or you're gone by Friday. Are we clear? She cleaned the coffee station. She restocked the bathroom. She came back at 1 o'clock, stood in front of his desk and said, done.
He didn't look up.
The lobby trash cans, all 6 of them. Then mopped the entryway. Rain tracked in mud this morning. Sir, that's custodial work. You're whatever I say you are. She did it. For 3 days, that was her life. Cleaning, fetching, carrying boxes, restocking printer paper, running personal errands, picking up Holloway's dry cleaning, grabbing lunch orders for people who wouldn't even look at her.
Not once was she given access to a computer.
Not once was she invited to a meeting. Not once did anyone on that floor speak to her like a colleague. On the second day, it got worse. A client walked in for a 10 o'clock appointment. Well-dressed, mid-50s, the kind of man who expected coffee in his hand before he sat down. Holloway greeted him personally, walked him past the reception area, and stopped right next to where Imani was wiping down the front counter.
Don't mind her,
Holloway said, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. That's our little charity case. Corporate center over. Diversity quota. You know how it is. The client chuckled, didn't even look at Imani. She kept wiping. Her hand didn't shake, but something behind her eyes went very still.
That afternoon in the break room,
2 associates, young, mid-20s, the kind who laughed at Holloway's jokes because they thought it would save them, stood by the microwave talking in voices they thought were low enough. I feel bad for her, honestly. Then say something. To Holloway? You remember what happened to Janet? 1 email, 1, and she was gone in 2 weeks. So what do we do? Nothing. Same thing everyone does.
they didn't know Imani was in the hallway.
She heard every word. She stood there for 10 seconds. Then she walked away. That night, Imani sat on the edge of her bed in her studio apartment in Midtown. Lights off, still in her work clothes. The blazer she'd pressed that morning smelled like floor cleaner and bleach. She picked up her phone, put it down, picked it up again.
She wanted to call her father.
Wanted to say, come get me, it's not worth it. They don't see me as a person, they see me as a punchline. But she didn't dial. She thought about what Raymond had said at the dining table. If you can't survive the floor, you can't lead it. She hated those words that night, hated how true they felt, hated that surviving meant swallowing something sharp and pretending it didn't cut. She set her alarm for 5:45. She went to sleep.
She showed up the next morning.
On the 4th day, something shifted. Imani arrived early, 6:45, before anyone else. She sat at an empty desk near the back of the floor, opened her laptop, her personal one, and began reviewing the branch's most recent quarterly performance report. It was public, posted on the bank's investor page, but nobody at that branch ever expected an intern to read it. By the time the first employees arrived at 8, she had 17 pages of notes. At 9:15, Holloway held his weekly staff meeting. 16 people around the conference table. Imani wasn't invited. She stood by the door holding a tray of coffee cups she'd been told to prepare. Holloway was mid-sentence, walking the team through a client retention problem that had been dragging down the branch's numbers for 2 straight quarters when Imani spoke. The retention issue isn't pricing, it's the onboarding delay. The room froze. Holloway turned slowly. Excuse me?
Your average client onboarding takes 11 days.
Industry standard is 5. That gap is where you're losing them. They sign, they wait, they leave. It's not loyalty, it's patience, and it's running out. Silence.
One of the junior analysts,
A young guy named Derek Whitfield, glanced at his own spreadsheet, then back at Imani. His eyes widened. He'd been staring at the same data for weeks. He'd seen the gap. He'd even drafted a memo about it, but he'd never sent it. Because the last time someone corrected Holloway in a meeting, they spent the next 3 months handling filing work in the basement until they quit. Derek looked at Imani and thought one thing. She's either the bravest person I've ever seen or she has no idea what she just did. She was right, and he knew it. And that made the silence in the room 10 times heavier. Holloway's neck flushed red. He set his pen down carefully, slowly, the way a man does when he's choosing between words and something worse. "Did I ask you?" "No, sir." "Then shut your mouth and put the coffee down." She put the coffee down. But the room had already changed. You could feel it. The air was different. Something had cracked. Not in Imani, but in the story they'd all been telling themselves. That she was nothing. That she was just a body filling a quota. That Holloway's treatment of her was rough, maybe, but not wrong. Now they weren't so sure. And Holloway could feel it too. Gloria Nash sat 2 seats from Holloway. She hadn't said a word during the meeting, but after Imani left the room, she pulled up the onboarding data on her own screen. 11.3 days. Imani hadn't just been right, she'd been precise. Gloria closed the spreadsheet and stared at her own reflection in the dark monitor for a long time. By Thursday of the second week, Holloway made his move. Not with words this time, with systems. He revoked her building access after 6 p.m. She could no longer stay late. He blocked her personal laptop from the branch Wi-Fi. He reassigned her to a windowless office on the 2nd floor, alone, and told the team she had been moved for performance concerns. He sent an email to the full staff. "Please do not include the intern in any client-facing communications, meetings, or file-sharing systems. She is under review." Under review. For what? Nobody asked. Nobody had to. The message was clear. Stay away from her. It worked, for most of them, but not all. Elaine Foster, 53, Senior Operations Manager, 21 years at Sterling Atlantic. She'd seen people come and go. She'd seen Holloway do this before, never this badly, but the pattern was the same. Find someone vulnerable, isolate them, break them down until they quit, then call it poor culture fit, and move on. Elaine brought Imani lunch one afternoon, set it on the desk in the windowless room, didn't say much, just sat with her. "You're Raymond's daughter, aren't you?" Imani looked up, careful. "How did you—" "The bracelet." Elaine nodded toward the gold chain on her wrist. "I've been at this bank long enough to know those initials, R.D. Raymond Davis. I was there the year he became chairman." Imani's voice dropped. "Please don't say anything." "I won't. He wanted me to do this on my own. No name, no title, just see if I could make it." Elaine studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "You're making it, sweetheart, whether they see it or not." She left the room without another word. But Holloway wasn't done. On Friday of that second week, he pulled his final card before the weekend. Staff meeting, full floor, 16 people standing around the open trading area. He called Imani up to the front. "Since our little charity case thinks she knows more than everyone in this room," he said, voice dripping, "let's give her a test, right here, right now." He pulled up a client portfolio on the wall screen, disguised the name, changed a few numbers, then turned to her. "Tell me what's wrong with this portfolio. You've got 30 seconds. The room was dead silent. Imani stared at the screen. 10 seconds passed. 20. She opened her mouth. "The risk allocation is off. You've got 62% in high volatility equities for a client profile that screams conservative. Either the advisor ignored the intake form or the form was never done. Also, the fee structure shows a double charge on Q3 management fees. That's either an error or a compliance issue." Holloway blinked. Derek Whitfield looked down at his hands. He wanted to clap. He didn't. One of the senior associates, Gloria Nash, let out a breath she'd clearly been holding. She looked at Imani the way you look at someone you've been underestimating and just realized it. Holloway recovered fast. He always did. "Lucky guess." He turned off the screen. "Now go restock the printer on 4. We're out of paper." She walked out of the room without a word. Behind her, the silence was louder than anything Holloway had ever said. That evening, Imani sat in her car in the parking garage. Engine off, hands on the wheel. The parking garage was empty, just concrete and fluorescent hum and the sound of her own breathing. She picked up her phone and dialed. It rang twice. "Hey, Dad." She didn't say much. Didn't tell him about the closet, the mop, the slap, the test. She didn't tell him about the client in the lobby, or the associates in the break room, or the nights she spent sitting in the dark wondering if any of this was worth it. She just said, "I'm still here." On the other end, Raymond Davis was quiet for a moment. "Good," he said. "That's all I needed to hear." She hung up, sat in the dark for a long time, longer than usual. Then she drove home. Monday morning of the third week, Imani did something she'd been avoiding since day one. She filed a formal complaint. She walked into the Human Resources office on the 4th floor at 8:30 sharp, sat down across from Colton Briggs, head of HR, 15 years at Sterling Atlantic, and Trent Holloway's closest friend since their fraternity days at Dartmouth. She didn't know that part yet. Imani laid it out. The slap on day one, the supply closet, the custodial assignments, the public humiliation in the staff meeting, the email banning the entire floor from speaking to her. She was calm, precise. She had dates, she had times. Colton listened with his hands folded, nodded at the right moments, wrote 3 lines on a yellow legal pad. Then he closed the pad and smiled. "I appreciate you coming forward, Imani. This is exactly the kind of thing we take seriously."
So what happens next?
"I'll open an internal inquiry. These things take time, usually 4 to 6 weeks. In the meantime, I'd recommend keeping a low profile. Don't engage with Mr. Holloway directly. Let the process work." 4 to 6 weeks? I'm only here for 8. "I understand, but we have to be thorough, fair to all parties." She left that office with a pit in her stomach she couldn't name. By Wednesday, she understood why. Holloway called her into his office at 10 a.m. Door open. Everyone on the floor could hear. "I got a call from HR this morning." He leaned back, arms crossed, smiling. "You filed a complaint against me?" She said nothing. "Let me tell you how this works, sweetheart. I've been at this bank since before you could read. Colton Briggs and I built this branch together. You think a piece of paper from an intern is going to change anything?" He leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to your little room on the 2nd floor. You're going to keep your mouth shut. And at the end of your 8 weeks, you're going to leave quietly, with a mediocre review, and nobody will ever remember your name. That's the best-case scenario." He paused. "The worst case? I make 1 phone call and your placement is terminated today. No review, no reference, nothing. You walk out of here with a black mark on your record that follows you to every bank in this city. Your choice." Imani stood in that doorway for a long moment. She could feel the eyes on her back, the whole floor pretending not to listen while hearing every single word. "Are you done, sir?" "Yeah, I'm done." She turned and walked back to the 2nd floor. That afternoon, she checked her email. The formal complaint she'd filed had been updated in the system. Status: reviewed. No action required. Insufficient evidence to proceed. 3 days. That's how long the 4 to 6 week inquiry lasted. 3 days and a closed file. She clicked on the reviewer's name at the bottom of the report. Colton Briggs. The same man she'd sat across from on Monday morning. From that point, the isolation became surgical. Her email access was restricted. She could receive messages but not send them to anyone outside the branch. Her security badge was downgraded. No access to the trading floor, no access to the conference rooms, no access to the client database. When Derek Whitfield tried to forward her a copy of the weekly analytics brief, something every intern was supposed to receive, his email bounced back with an auto-reply. "Recipient not authorized for this distribution list." He walked down to the 2nd floor and knocked on her door. "Hey, I tried to send you the brief. Your email's blocked." "I know." "This isn't right. What he's doing to you, everyone can see it." "Then why doesn't anyone say anything?" Derek didn't answer. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, looking at the floor. Then he said quietly, "Because the last person who went against Holloway got transferred to a branch in Montana. Middle of winter. She quit 2 weeks later."
He left the brief on her desk,
Printed, not emailed, and walked away. Imani was alone again, but she wasn't doing nothing. Every night she went home and documented everything. Dates, times, witnesses, screenshots of the restricted email, a photo of the HR complaint marked "No action required." She saved it all on a personal drive, encrypted, backed up twice. She never told her father the details. Their calls stayed short. "I'm still here, Dad." "Good." That was it.
but Raymond Davis wasn't a fool.
He'd been chairman of Sterling Atlantic for 9 years. He knew what happened inside his own branches, and he had people, quiet people, old guard people, who kept him informed. One of them was Elaine Foster. On Thursday of the 3rd week, Elaine made a call from her personal cell phone during her lunch break. She didn't call Raymond directly. She called his executive assistant, a woman named Patricia Holt, and said 6 words.
He needs to see this himself.
She didn't explain. She didn't have to. Patricia had worked for Raymond long enough to know what those words meant. That Friday, a name appeared on the internal calendar for the Manhattan branch. A routine visit, compliance review, scheduled for the following Monday. The name on the calendar read R. Davis, Chairman's office.
Trent Holloway saw it and smiled.
A visit from the chairman meant one thing, a chance to perform. He sent an email to the entire staff. Monday, chairman visit, full professional dress, all hands on deck. I want this floor spotless, every report current, every client file updated, no exceptions. He spent the weekend rehearsing his talking points. Revenue growth, client acquisition, staff efficiency. He pressed his best suit. He shined his shoes.
He had no idea what was actually walking through that door.
Monday morning, 8:45. The Manhattan branch of Sterling Atlantic Bank looked like it had been staged for a magazine shoot. Fresh flowers on the reception desk, every surface wiped, every screen displaying the quarterly dashboard. The staff stood a little straighter, spoke a little softer, smiled a little wider.
Trent Holloway stood at the front of the trading floor in a charcoal suit
and a silk tie he saved for board meetings. He'd been there since 7, checked the conference room twice, rearranged the welcome packet 3 times, made sure his nameplate was polished and centered on his desk. He was ready. At exactly 9 o'clock, the elevator doors opened.
Raymond Davis stepped out first.
Tall, silver-haired, navy suit, no briefcase, no entourage, just 2 people behind him. Patricia Holt, his executive assistant, carrying a single leather folder, and a woman in a dark blazer with a lanyard that read Internal Compliance Division. Holloway crossed the floor in 4 steps, hand out, smile locked. "Mr. Davis, it's an honor, sir. We've been looking forward to this. The team has prepared a full presentation on our Q3.
That won't be necessary.
Raymond's voice was calm, low, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to command a room. "This isn't a performance review, Trent." Holloway's smile faded a 1/4 inch. "Of course, whatever you need, sir. My office is... We'll use the conference room. I'd like the full staff present, everyone, including interns." The word landed like a stone dropped in still water.
Holloway blinked.
"Interns? Sir, we only have one at the moment, and she's on a different floor. I can have someone..." "I know where she is." Raymond was already walking toward the conference room. "Have her brought up, now." Holloway's mouth opened, then closed. He turned to the nearest associate and snapped, "Go get the intern, 2nd floor." While they waited, Raymond stood at the head of the conference table. 41 employees filed in, standing along the walls, crowding the doorway. Holloway took his usual seat at the right side of the table, closest to the head, the power seat. Raymond didn't sit. He looked at Holloway and asked, casually, the way you'd ask about the weather, "Tell me about your intern program, Trent. How's it going this cycle?"
Holloway straightened his tie.
This was comfortable territory. "Excellent, sir. We run a tight ship here. Every intern gets hands-on experience, direct mentorship, Full integration into branch operations. Full integration. That's good to hear. Raymond nodded slowly. And the current intern, how's she performing? Honestly? Holloway leaned back, confident. She's been a challenge, attitude problems, resistance to direction. I've had to move her off the main floor for performance concerns. I've been documenting everything. Documenting everything. Raymond repeated the words like he was tasting them. So you'd say you've been fair with her? More than fair, sir. I've given her every opportunity. Some people just aren't cut out for this environment. A few employees shifted their weight against the walls. Derek Whitfield stared at the table. Gloria Nash's jaw tightened. Raymond let the silence sit for 3 full seconds. Then he said, I appreciate your honesty, Trent. The door opened. Imani walked in. She was wearing the same blazer she wore every day. Same flats. Same gold bracelet on her left wrist. Her cheek had healed weeks ago, but the memory hadn't. You could see it in the way she held herself. Shoulders back, chin level, but careful. Like someone who had learned to take up as little space as possible. She saw her father standing at the head of the table. He saw her. Neither of them said a word. Not yet. Raymond gestured to an open seat. She sat. He unbuttoned his jacket and looked at the room for a long, measured moment. Then he spoke. How many of you have worked with this young woman? Silence. She's been at this branch for 3 weeks. How many of you have spoken to her, mentored her, included her in a single meeting? Nothing. Eyes dropped to the table. Pens clicked. Someone shifted their weight against the back wall. Let me rephrase. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. How many of you watched a senior executive assault a 22-year-old intern on her first day and did nothing? The air left the room. Holloway sat up straight. Sir, I'm not sure what you've been told, but I haven't been told anything, Trent. I've seen it. Raymond nodded to Patricia, who opened the leather folder and placed a tablet on the table. She tapped the screen. Security footage. High definition. Time-stamped. The trading floor. Day 1. Imani walking in. Holloway's voice cutting across the room. The folders knocked from her hands. The slap. The sound. Even through the tablet's tiny speakers, made someone in the back of the room flinch. Holloway stared at the screen, his face drained of color, not because he didn't remember, but because he'd never imagined anyone would care enough to look. Raymond let the footage play to the end. Then he paused it. Imani's face frozen on the screen, hand on her cheek, eyes locked on Holloway. Raymond looked at Holloway, calm, measured, like a man about to drop a boulder off a cliff. You just told me 30 seconds ago in front of your entire staff that you gave this young woman every opportunity, that she had attitude problems, that you documented everything. Is that correct? Holloway's mouth was dry. Sir, Is that what you said? Yes, but context. The context is on the screen, Trent. Raymond turned back to the room. The silence was absolute. Not even the air conditioning seemed to move. This woman, Raymond said, is my daughter. The room didn't gasp. It was worse than that. It was the sound of 40 people understanding all at once that they had made the worst miscalculation of their professional lives. Holloway's face went white. His hands gripped the armrests. His mouth moved twice before any sound came out. That's not possible. She applied through the general portal. Her file doesn't mention me because she didn't want it to. Raymond's voice was steady, final. She came here under her own name, her own credentials, her own merit. She asked for no special treatment. She told no one who she was. Derek Whitfield closed his eyes. His hand pressed flat against the table like he needed something solid to hold on to. Gloria Nash's face flushed red. She stared at Imani, not with pity, but with something closer to guilt. Elaine Foster, standing by the window, let out a slow breath. She didn't smile, but her eyes were wet. She had kept this secret for 2 weeks. Now it was no longer hers to carry. Holloway was spiraling. You could see it happening in real time. Mr. Davis, if you had known, you wouldn't have slapped her. If you had known, you would have treated her like a human being. Raymond's voice dropped even lower. That's the problem, Trent. Not that you didn't know, that it mattered. Holloway had nothing. No charm, no angle, no 18-year track record that could absorb what was happening. Raymond continued. She wanted to earn her place, the same way I earned mine 30 years ago when I started as a teller in a branch half this size.
He stood up.
What she got instead was a slap across the face. She was locked in a supply closet. She was forced to mop floors and clean bathrooms. She was banned from meetings, stripped of system access, and publicly humiliated in front of the people who should have been her colleagues. His eyes moved to Colton Briggs, who sat 3 seats down with his legal pad in front of him. The same yellow legal pad. And when she followed the proper channel, when she trusted this institution enough to file a formal complaint, that complaint was reviewed and closed in 72 hours by the same man who plays golf with her abuser every Sunday. Briggs looked like he was going to be sick. Raymond turned back to Holloway. Trent, stand up. Holloway stood. His legs were not steady. You've been at this bank for 18 years. In that time, you've built this branch into one of our top performers. That's a fact. But here's another fact. Raymond's voice dropped. Quiet. Final. 4 HR complaints in 3 years. All buried. A pattern of intimidation. A culture of silence that you built and maintained. And now, physical assault on an unarmed, unthreatening young woman on her first day of work. He paused. I didn't come here to make a scene. I came here because my daughter, despite everything you did to her, never once asked me to intervene. She documented every incident. She showed up every single day. She did the work you gave her, even when that work was designed to degrade her. He looked at Imani. She earned her place here. You tried to erase it. Imani sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded on the table. The gold bracelet caught the overhead light. 2 letters facing up. R.D. Raymond turned to the woman from internal compliance. Catherine, you have everything you need? Catherine Voss opened her own folder. I do, sir. He turned back to the room. What happens next will not be decided today. But I want every person in this room to understand one thing. He looked at each face one at a time. Silence is a choice, and in this company, that choice has consequences. He buttoned his jacket. This meeting isn't over. We're just getting started. The conference room doors stayed closed for the next 2 hours. What happened inside wasn't a meeting, it was a reckoning. Catherine Voss, from internal compliance, ran the room with the precision of a surgeon. No emotion, no speeches, just evidence, laid out one piece at a time. She started with the security footage. Not just the slap, though she played that twice, frame by frame, with the timestamp visible in the corner. She pulled footage from every camera on the trading floor from Imani's first 3 weeks. The supply closet, the break room, Holloway pointing at the mop, Imani carrying trash bags through the lobby in her blazer while clients walked past. Holloway leaning into a client's ear in the lobby. The audio wasn't clear, but the subtitle transcription read, "Don't mind her, that's our little charity case." A woman in the back row, one of the junior associates who'd laughed at Holloway's joke on day 1, covered her mouth with her hand. Then the emails. The message Holloway sent banning staff from communicating with Imani, projected on the wall screen for everyone to read. The restricted email access, the downgraded security badge, the analytics brief that bounced back when Derek Whitfield tried to forward it. Catherine read the email out loud, every word, slowly. Please do not include the intern in any client-facing communications, meetings, or file-sharing systems. She is under review. She looked at the room. Can anyone tell me what this intern was under review for? What specific performance issue triggered this action? Nobody spoke. Because I've reviewed every file in this branch's system. There is no performance review. There is no documented issue. There is no write-up, no warning, no coaching plan. This email was sent to 41 employees with 0 documentation behind it. She let that sit. Then the HR file. Colton Briggs's formal review of Imani's complaint, opened on Monday, closed on Wednesday. 3 days. No interviews conducted. No witnesses contacted. No follow-up. The final line of the report read, "Insufficient evidence to proceed." Catherine looked at Briggs. "Mr. Briggs, did you interview a single employee before closing this complaint?" His voice cracked. I conducted an initial assessment based on yes or no. No. Did you review the security footage that was available to you at the time? I didn't think it was yes or no. No. Did you inform Mr. Holloway that a complaint had been filed against him within 24 hours of receiving it? Briggs didn't answer. He didn't have to. Holloway's own words in his office, "I got a call from HR this morning," had already confirmed it for the entire floor. Catherine pulled up one more document, a side-by-side comparison. On the left, Colton Briggs's calendar for the Monday Imani filed her complaint. On the right, Trent Holloway's calendar for the same day, 11:15 a.m. Briggs, lunch with T.H. Holloway. Lunch, Colton. 45 minutes after Imani sat in that office and laid out her case, the man who was supposed to protect her sat across a table from her abuser and told him everything. Catherine closed the folder. That's a direct violation of Sterling Atlantic's confidentiality policy, Section 12.4. The complainant's identity is protected. You disclosed it to the accused within 1 business day. You then closed the case without conducting a single investigative step. Briggs stared at the table. His hands were shaking. Raymond stood. He didn't raise his voice. He never had to. Trent Holloway. Holloway looked up. The confidence was gone. The charm was gone. What was left was a man in an expensive suit who suddenly looked 10 years older than he had that morning. Effective immediately, you are terminated from Sterling Atlantic Bank. Your access to all systems, facilities, and client accounts is revoked as of this moment. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You have 30 minutes. Holloway's jaw tightened. You can't. I built this branch. 18 years. I made this location what it is. You also struck a 22-year-old woman across the face in front of 40 witnesses. You created a hostile work environment. You weaponized internal systems to isolate and degrade an employee. And you obstructed a formal HR process through personal connections. Raymond paused. 18 years of results don't erase 18 seconds of assault. Holloway opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. This is because she's your daughter. The room held its breath. Raymond's expression didn't change. If she weren't my daughter, would that slap have been acceptable? Would locking an intern in a supply closet have been leadership? Would blocking her email and banning her from meetings have been good management? Holloway said nothing. The fact that she's my daughter is the reason I found out. But the reason you're being terminated is your conduct, period. And this matter has been referred to Sterling Atlantic's legal counsel for further review. He turned to Briggs. Colton Briggs, you are removed from your position as head of human resources effective immediately. You will be reassigned to a non-supervisory administrative role pending a full review of every HR case you've handled in the last 36 months. If that review finds a pattern consistent with what we've seen today, your employment will be terminated as well. Briggs nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't look up. The yellow legal pad sat in front of him. 3 lines. That's all he'd written when Imani poured out 3 weeks of abuse. 3 lines. Raymond addressed the room one final time. I want to be clear about something. What happened in this branch is not just about one man. It's about a system that allowed it. 40 people watched an intern get slapped on her first day. Nobody filed a report. Nobody called the ethics hotline. Nobody stepped forward, with one exception. He looked at Elaine Foster. Elaine, thank you. Elaine pressed her lips together and nodded. Her eyes were glassy but steady. Starting this week, Sterling Atlantic will implement a mandatory bystander intervention protocol across all branches. An independent ombudsman will be appointed to handle all future HR complaints, separate from branch management, reporting directly to the board. And every employee in this company will complete a recertified ethics and conduct training within 90 days. He paused. let it land. But policy alone doesn't fix culture. People fix culture. Every person in this room has a choice going forward. What you do with it will define this branch far more than any revenue number on a spreadsheet. Derek Whitfield sat in the third row. His eyes were red. He thought about the printed brief he'd left on Imani's desk. Too little, too late. He thought about the memo he'd drafted about the onboarding delay and never sent. He thought about every morning he'd walked past the second floor and kept walking. Gloria Nash stared at the table. She thought about the moment Imani dissected that portfolio in 30 seconds. She'd known right then. Known that this woman was something. And she'd sat there, said nothing, done nothing. Let Holloway send her to restock a printer. The room was still. He turned to Holloway one last time. The man was still standing, hands at his sides, eyes red. "Trent, one more thing." Holloway looked at him. "The legal team will be in contact regarding potential civil liability, but I've asked them to include a provision." Raymond's voice softened, not with weakness, but with something heavier. "If you voluntarily complete a behavioral rehabilitation program, 12 months, certified, no shortcuts, and demonstrate a documented commitment to change, Sterling Atlantic will not pursue the maximum penalties available." Holloway blinked. He hadn't expected that. "That's not forgiveness," Raymond said. "That's an opportunity. What you do with it is up to you." He buttoned his jacket. "Security is outside, 30 minutes. Holloway turned and walked toward the door. He passed Imani's chair on the way out. For 1 second, just one, their eyes met. She didn't look away. She didn't gloat. She didn't flinch. She just watched him go. The door closed behind him. The room exhaled. But Imani didn't exhale. Not yet. She sat in that chair with her hands still folded, bracelet still catching the light, and felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in 3 weeks. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was relief. The kind that doesn't come with noise. The kind that just sits in your chest, quiet and heavy and warm, and says, "It's over. You made it. You can breathe now." She breathed. The trading floor was quiet for the rest of that Monday. Not the tense, afraid kind of quiet from before. A different kind. The kind that comes after something breaks open and everyone is still figuring out what to do with the pieces. Trent Holloway was escorted out of the building at 11:42 a.m. He carried one cardboard box. His nameplate was not in it. Security walked him to the parking garage. He didn't look back. By noon, the emails had already started circulating across the company. Not the official ones. Those came later. The unofficial ones. The whispered Slack messages. The group texts. The "Did you hear what happened at Manhattan branch?" threads that spread through Sterling Atlantic like wildfire. By 3 o'clock, every branch in the network knew. Colton Briggs cleared his desk by end of day. He was reassigned to a compliance documentation role in the New Jersey office. No direct reports, no HR authority, no access to employee complaint systems. His 36-month case review began the following week. Early findings were not in his favor, but the real transformation didn't happen in HR reports or internal memos. It happened on the floor. Tuesday morning, Imani walked onto the trading floor for the first time as a real member of the team. Not the second floor, not the supply closet, the actual floor. There was a desk waiting for her. 3rd row, clean monitor, fresh login credentials, a Sterling Atlantic coffee mug sitting next to the keyboard, the unofficial signal that you belonged. Derek Whitfield had put it there. He was the first to approach her that morning. He didn't make a speech, didn't apologize with a paragraph, just walked over, set a printed copy of the weekly analytics brief on her desk, and said, "You should have had this 3 weeks ago." She nodded. "Thank you, Derek." "Don't thank me. I should have done it sooner." He went back to his desk. That was enough. Gloria Nash stopped by an hour later. She pulled up a chair, sat beside Imani, and spent 40 minutes walking her through the client management system. Showed her the dashboard, showed her the shortcuts, answered every question without once making her feel like she should already know. "You pointed out that onboarding delay in the staff meeting," Gloria said. "Nobody in this branch had the nerve to say it. Holloway killed that conversation every time it came up. It was just data. Data nobody else was brave enough to read out loud. By the end of the first week, Imani had been folded into 2 active projects. Client retention analysis, the same issue she'd flagged in that staff meeting, and a new hire experience audit, requested directly by Raymond's office, designed to evaluate how every branch in the network treated incoming employees during their first 30 days. She didn't lead the audit. She contributed. Quietly, thoroughly, with the same focus she'd brought to everything else. From the quarterly report she'd studied at 6:45 in the morning to the portfolio she'd dissected in front of 16 silent colleagues. Elaine Foster watched from across the floor. She didn't hover, didn't mother, just kept an eye out the way she always had. One afternoon, she caught Imani's eye across the room and gave her a small nod. Imani nodded back. That was their language now. The independent ombudsman position was posted company-wide by the end of that second week. Applications came from inside and outside the bank. Raymond insisted the final hire report to the board directly, not to branch management, not to HR, not to anyone with a reason to make problems disappear. The bystander intervention training rolled out the following month. It wasn't a checkbox exercise. It was built around real scenarios, adapted, with her permission, from Imani's own documented experience. She didn't attend those sessions as a victim. She attended as a consultant. 3 months later, Imani completed her internship. Her final evaluation was written by Gloria Nash and co-signed by the interim branch manager, a woman named Sandra Caldwell, promoted from within, the first black woman to lead a Sterling Atlantic branch in the state of New York. Imani's evaluation said nothing about who her father was. It didn't need to. It said, exceptional analytical skills, strong communication under pressure, demonstrates integrity and composure beyond her experience level, recommended for full-time placement without reservation. She'd earned every word. 6 months later, Trent Holloway enrolled in a behavioral rehabilitation program in Virginia. 12 months. No shortcuts. He never spoke publicly about what happened at Sterling Atlantic, but those who knew him said something had changed. He stopped raising his voice. He started listening. Whether it was shame or growth, only time would tell. His case file stayed open with Sterling Atlantic's legal team. The civil liability provision remained on the table, contingent on completion of the program. Not 1 day less. Colton Briggs didn't survive his 36-month case review. 7 buried complaints. 3 employees who had quietly resigned rather than fight a system designed to protect the people at the top. His employment was terminated 8 months later. No provision, no second chance. Some doors close because you held them shut for too many others. Sterling Atlantic's bystander intervention protocol became a model. 2 other banks adopted it within the year. The Independent Ombudsman Office processed more complaints in its first quarter than the old HR system had addressed in 3 years. Not because the problems were new, because the people finally believed someone would listen. Imani Davis accepted a full-time analyst position at Sterling Atlantic's headquarters. She requested no special office, no special title. She started on the same floor as every other new hire. On her first day, she passed a young intern standing alone in the lobby, nervous, unsure, holding a folder too tightly. Imani stopped, smiled, and said, "First day? Come on, I'll show you around." Nobody had done that for her, so she made sure she'd be the one to do it for someone else. The bracelet was still on her wrist. 2 letters, R.D. She never took it off.
18 years, that's how long Trent Holloway sat in that chair, one slap, and it was over. And here's the thing about Imani. She had the power to end it on day one phone call, "Dad, come get me," and Holloway would have been gone before lunch. She never made that call. For 3 weeks, she sat in a supply closet. She mopped floor in a blazer. She filed a complaint that got buried in 72 hours, and she still showed up in the morning. because Imani understood something most people spend a lifetime missing. Your name doesn't prove who you are. What you do when nobody knows your name, that does. And 40 people watched that lab and chose silence. Holloway didn't last 18 years alone. Their silence kept him in that chair. So the question isn't what would you do if you were Amani. The question is, how many rooms have you been in where silence was the loudest voice? And which side of that silence were you on? Drop a comment. Tell me your story. If this one hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you're new. We do this every week, and remember, silence is a choice. Make sure yours says something worth hearing.